A Department of Defense agency known as the Defense Information Systems Agency revealed that between May and July of 2019, it may have suffered a massive data breach. Joining us to discuss how this could further impact our nation's national security is the host of the CyberHub Engage podcast, James Azar. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
I first just want to start off with, what does the term data breach entail?
It essentially means an unauthorized access of data. So someone who wasn't supposed to access the data physically accessed it and got a hold of it.
Do we know what information may have been breached, considering that the DISA is tasked with protecting telecommunications for the president, vice president, the Secret Service, and members of the armed forces?
So right now, initial indications only show that it's PII, personal identifiable information, of around almost 200,000 people allegedly, although DISA, which is based out of Fort Meade, Maryland, only has around 1,000 uniformed people working in the agency, as well as 7,000 civilians. So the whole idea of 200,000 people's information being violated, there's I think a bit of a jump to conclusion. DISA has essentially just identified in their initial letter that it involves people's personal information, including social security numbers.
How can a data breach jeopardize citizens as well as government officials, including the president himself?
So when you look at DISA and you look at just, the largest breach from a DoD perspective was the OPM breach in 2014. It exposed around 21 million Americans, people who hold security clearances and so forth. This activity seems to be something that typically China does. Now, there's no indications that China is behind this specific breach, but they're very much into understanding who works where, getting their personal information in order to better build profiles of who works in what defense agency. And so as we kind of look at this, where the impact might be is in how China is able to dissect and analyze, or whoever got this data, whether it be Iran, China, or Russia, are able to analyze what kind of people we hire into the defense agency, what kind of civilians we work with, and so forth, which could create an entire insider threat perspective that's a bit hard to fathom of how we can pull ourselves out of.
And it's interesting because this actually is relevant to the whole Huawei situation, where President Trump says he does not want Huawei because there are security concerns, national security concerns, because they work with the Chinese government. But I do want to switch gears a little bit. While we're on the subject of cybersecurity, let me ask you this. Over the weekend, officials briefed Senator Bernie Sanders that Russia was attempting to help his campaign. What do we know about the extent to which they were seeking to help the Sanders campaign, and do we know how they were doing this?
So in the Mueller report, one of the aspects that Mueller spoke about in terms of Russia disinformation was their ability to create these fake online identities. And given the fact that all of our social media platforms have already indicated how they plan to work during this election season to essentially prevent the spread of malinformation, the Russians know exactly how to operate in that realm now without being detected. And so, one, they're spreading a bunch of discord and disinformation around Bernie, but overall, Russia does want to support Bernie. I mean, at the end of the day, Bernie gives their platform, their communist platform, an agenda in the longest democracy on the planet. And so Bernie plays right into the Russian hands. Bernie has tried to say that the Bernie bros online are part of the Russia disinformation, and there's been no proof of that whatsoever. In fact, when I tried to contact several of the Bernie bros online, I ran into U.S. citizens who are Bernie bros. So Russia is all about helping Bernie in the Democratic and sowing discord and creating this sort of fight that thrives for them.
And it was really interesting to hear his reaction when he was asked by reporters. But can we expect more cyber attacks during this election year, whether it comes from Russia's disinformation campaign or China hacking into our election system?
Well, yes, and yes. So we should expect a lot more. I think don't discount Iran. Iran has a vendetta with President Trump after killing Soleimani. And so we're bound to see Iran at some point or another try to use their cyber capabilities to try and impact President Trump's credibility online as well. We're bound to see a lot of these things happen over the next, 9 months before Election Day. And so, yes, so just know where you get to get your information from, trust but verify, like President Reagan always said, and anticipate that the Russian, Chinese, Iranians, and others are bound to sow discord, because that's what makes them more powerful, essentially, and gives them leverage. If we're so busy with ourselves, we're not busy dealing with them.
Especially since Americans, they're more up to date regarding how Russia and China and those sort of countries, our adversaries, are really trying to infiltrate our election system, because back in 2015, 2016, it wasn't really known to the American people. So it'll be interesting to see how we react to all that. James Azar, thank you so much again, the host of CyberHub Engage podcast. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie. Have a great morning.
Thank you, you too.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One American News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One American News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.